Hello. EHCPs, Educational Healthcare Plan. Now, they are things that some children in schools have to help them with their learning. They are often used by local authorities when the state system can't provide what the child needs. So it will often name an independent school in the EHCP saying this school would be better placed to help this child. They are a real bone of contention. The system doesn't work. You have to wait years for an EHCP. The local authorities often don't have the money because invariably what the recommendation would be an independent school or one-to-one tutoring or very bespoke help for the child to help them through their educational journey, which costs money. So the local authorities don't have a lot of money, in fact, no money. And so often these just get refused. And then if the parents take it to a tribunal, that's when you might get some help. Quite a lot of time the local authorities don't turn up to the tribunals because they literally can't afford to be there. So the EHCP will be passed. But then, of course, is there any money in the pot to deliver the EHCP? Probably not. It's a traumatic experience for any family to go through. It can be traumatic for teachers and the schools as well. It's effectively trying to help a child who really needs the help, but being constrained by finance and bureaucracy along the way. So no, it's not a process that anyone ever really wants to go on. However, it can be the difference between an education in a mainstream setting or just an education or not. So the principle of an EHCP works, the funding doesn't. Now, we all know this, and we all know that the special educational needs system is broken. And a lot of parents have been getting around that, those that can, by sending their children into the independent sector, which is more able to help the children. It's more able to prepare them for the future, to cater to their needs, and to give them the education that they require in a mainstream setting, but helping them along the way, the little bits. Now, of course, not every parent can afford to do that, or many parents will make huge sacrifices in their life to be able to afford that. So we hear stories of people selling houses, selling cars, never going on a holiday, cutting every corner they possibly can so that they can afford the fees to send them to the school. Then there are those parents in the state system that just could never afford to do that. So they rely very heavily on the EHCP. And in some settings, those children will then have, the local authority will pay a percentage or all of the fees to get the child into the independent sector. So special educational needs is broken. Now, what's happening at the minute is twofold. So we're seeing with the VAT on education policy, that's killing it even more, because where many of those children were, then the local authority will pay their portion of the fees, but the parents will have to pay their portion of the fees with VAT on top of it, which they can't afford to do. So again, if your EHCP was for little Johnny to go to the School of Pencil, then the local authority might pay the School of Pencil 50% of the fees, and Johnny's mum and dad will pay the other 50% of the fees, which, will be a stretch, or maybe a stretch, but they've now got to pay 20% extra on their fees or whatever VAT is being passed on by the school. The local authority don't have to do that. They're exempt, but the family are not exempt. So if they cannot afford to do that, then this child, even though the EHCP has said that they should be in the school that they're in, if they can't afford it, they're going back into the state system, to the very system that they needed the EHCP to get out of. It makes no sense. So what the government are now trying to do in the education bill is take away EHCPs. So they are trying to change the system so that they no longer exist, or they only exist in specialist schools. Now, an EHCP is the only legal obligation a school has to provide a bespoke education for a child. That's the only legal recourse families have. It's the only rubber stamping that says your child isn't getting what it should be getting in the state system, so we are going to create this educational and healthcare plan and make sure that your child gets it in whatever setting. That is the only legal recourse a family has. So if that is taken away, what are they left with? Nothing. They are left with the state telling them what they think their child needs, not the family saying to the state, we think this is what it is because we're the parents of our child and we know them and this is what our child's telling us. No. This is the state telling the parents what the child needs, and there is no legal recourse from the parents to do anything about that. So if the EHCP system has gone, effectively, children's and parents' rights in the special educational needs sector are gone. There is nothing. So in the education bill, where we're hearing all of this bluff and fluster about how the Department for Education are improving the special educational needs scene, they're not. What they're doing is taking away parents' legal rights and children's legal rights to their education. And if we're starting to take away the legal rights to an education, where does that put us on a platform in society? It's an interesting question. I'm going to put links to a couple of articles in this because it's difficult to understand. It's really difficult to understand. And there's a lot of legal jargon around it and a lot of in-depth analysis that is important to know. But the headline is there will be no legal recourse for families and kids. Now, that's state control, isn't it? That is state controlling your children on what they think is right for them. That's not what parents get to say. Parents don't get the right then to say, this is what we think is right for our child. And if we start moving in that direction, where do we stop? We've already got Bridget Phillipson saying that, you know, babies from 9 months old can be in nurseries, in state-run nurseries. We've already got them trying to get all of our kids into breakfast clubs so that we can have them in school for longer, so that we can feed them what we want. And we're going to change the curriculum to what the state would like your children to learn, not what you would like your children to learn, what the state would like your children to learn. So the control is coming in thick and fast. And then this is a massive move because this is taking away legal rights. Now, I've talked before about home education and about how the same thing is happening in home education and how you're almost being seen to be on the back foot before you even get on the front foot if you ever wanted to educate your child at home. You're seen like a criminal, an abuser, and you have to prove that you're not. That's what's happening in the education bill for home educators, and now for the special educational needs sector, it's the same. So I'm going to put some links to this. Have a read. I'm also going to put the link to a petition. Now, you may or may not wish to sign it, but there is a petition and it is gaining momentum. It's nearly 100,000 signatures. And if this is something that you feel strongly about, that you don't want the state to control your children's outcomes, or you don't want the state to control your grandchildren's outcomes, or just you don't want the state to have that level of control full stop in life, because of course if we're doing it with children, where are we going to stop? What control are they going to have over the rest of us? It's the way it's moving. So I'll put those links in. As I said, it is a lot to get your head round and it is a lot to digest, but it is terrifying. And this is something that is in the mainstream media. This is something that is beginning to bubble to the top. Whether the government managed to push it down to the bottom a bit so that you and I aren't aware of it, well, there we go. But I'm making you aware of it now. Do your own research. As I always say with all of these videos, don't just take my word for it. Do your own research. You may read it and think, actually, I don't agree with that. She's talking rubbish. That's fine. You can think that. But at least if you are interested, have a look at the articles. And then if you felt compelled to, you could also sign the petition. I'll leave you with that. It's good Sunday morning reading. And I think it's definitely worth 10 minutes of anyone's time.